was a supervisor in the department right by the door of the cafeteria. And, she'd come up from the basement, and Beulah worked over in apartment 90 in the welding, and they would meet there and go in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
But, that was before I just saw
Knew
them.
about them, right.
They were there.
Right.
Well,
Now, see, I didn't know that. I thought you guys met on a bowling team.
Well, after
That's how we got together.
that's how.
Oh, you started
that's
bowling.
the
Question here.
bowling
Yeah.
team when we really started, of talking.
We knew
to
of each other from work, but
Right.
just knew.
Just
yeah.
passing by.
And
I even saw Buell get in a fight. And I saw her drive off, walk off, and she come back with a car to pick him up, and I thought, man, she must be a pretty brave woman to just do stuff like that. Just turn, walk off.
And you
Turn and
know
walk
why? You know why? Because he told me, he said, Mead, if I ever get in a fight, don't interfere because you'll get me whipped. Because I'll be watching you
Oh.
and, I'll get whipped. So he picked on a guy that was 20 years younger than he was, lots heavier, younger and heavier. And I thought, if he gets whipped, he's not going to blame
It's not going to blame it on you.
So I just went and got the car and brought it up. I figured he'd get whipped.
That's the clock.
Yeah. Did he get whipped?
Oh, well, they stopped it.
Oh, yeah.
Tina, did you turn that on?
Yeah.
Oh, you already started it?
Just go now.
I didn't know you'd started it. The only thing is, just keep your voice up.
Yeah.
And but that's the camera. And so we're going to ask you some questions. We're just going to start with, your name is Harvey Puckett, right?
Yeah.
And tell us when you were born.
I was born on June the 8th, 1924.
And where were you born?
I was born at Paragould, Arkansas, in Greene County.
Okay. Were you born in a hospital or born at home?
Home.
All right.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the town you grew up in. Is it a little town, big town?
Well, we moved lots. Well, see, when I was, I don't remember, I wasn't old enough to go to school yet. I remember us moving from Arkansas to southeast Missouri. And we was moving in a big old, in a Model T truck, and I don't know what model it was. But I remember moving, I remember of the driver running in the ditch, and I remember stopping at an empty house, and they had watermelons in there, and they got a watermelon out, and we ate watermelon, and in a movie, and we lived on a sheriff's place there in Duncan County. It was his name was Abner Schultz, and then we didn't have a lot because my dad couldn't work. He was blind. He wasn't stone blind, but he couldn't see how to farm. He couldn't see how to do things like that. And about all the work that he did was like clearing ground and things like that. And then we didn't make garden. But I didn't have clothes to start school when I was 6 years old. And the girl, the daughter of the sheriff, I remember I didn't like her because she was always teasing me about my name's Harvey Lee. And she'd say, Harvey Lee killed a flea. Harvey Lee sat on his daddy's knee. Harvey Lee sat on his daddy's knee and peed. And
Those are the kind of things you never forget about somebody.
I never forgot that, but she got me some clothes and some like knee pants and those socks that come up to about there, and button shoes that where you use a button, they're high top,
right.
And they were two-tone, and I thought that was great. That was real. And so,
tell us a little bit about your mom.
my mom, she had a physical problem too, and she didn't go to school because she had a nerve problem. And she wasn't able to go to school. They didn't have special education back in them days, And so and I don't know about her parents because I never saw any of my grandparents. But she lived with one of her sisters, pretty much so, before her and my dad was married. And so.
And you have some brothers and sisters?
She had brothers and sisters.
You did.
No,
Oh, I had. Yeah, there was. I had 7 brothers and 2 sisters.
Where'd you fall in that group?
I was the fifth one.
All right.
And I was the oldest boy that had good eyes. Half of the boys were born with bad eyes, and half of us had good eyes. And so there were two girls. So one girl had good eyes, and one girl had bad eyes. So that was kind of a situation where I was the one that kind of helped take care of the family. I had to quit school when I was in the 5th grade and start sharecropping and in the farm, on the farm like that. And so that I had a 5th grade education, and that was it. I went to school after I come up here and everything. I went to night school, I went to adult school, and I went to Dave Rankin school, and and things like that. And I went to Bible school, but that was my education, 5th grade, and so.
All right. Well, I know you were pretty busy then as a boy. Did you have a good friend when you were a boy? Who was your best friend?
Yeah, I had a good boy, my best friend, and that was after we had come back from Missouri, moved back to Arkansas, and I forget his name right now, but we were real good friends. But when our brothers got us out in the woods or in the field, and they'd rub our nose together and make us fight each other and all like that, and I thought many times we should have teamed up and fought them instead of one another. But that's kind of, we were good friends for a long, long time. Yeah.
Now, did you have a nickname when you were a boy?
No, I don't think I ever had some would call me Red. I was redheaded and freckle-faced, and they teased me about my mom didn't raise me. She put me on a stump and the peckerwoods fed me.
So not a nickname you liked anyway?
No, not a nickname that I liked.
All right. Well, tell us a little bit about the first job you had. Besides the farm. Right.
First job I had was when I come to St. Louis in December 1941, and I started working at White Castle. And the castle, White Castle, was located at Kings Highway and Easton Avenue. Right. There was a big Sears store right across Kings Highway there from where it was.
Well, before we get to St. Louis, tell us a little bit about how you got to St. Louis, because I think that's an interesting story too.
Yeah.
How'd that happen?
Like I said, I was the one that really, took care of the family and everything, and I drove the car for him. My first car to drive was a 1927 Model T Ford, one-seated car.
How old were you then?
I was probably about 12 years old, and I wasn't old enough to get driver's license. And my dad bought this here Model T Ford for $25, and we got the guy got his house. He just got out and said, "It's all yours." I'd never driven a car before in my life. My oldest brother, which had bad eyes, he kind of guided me a little bit, but he didn't know how to drive either. And so we got in that Model T Ford and brought it home, and he showed me which pedal to push, and to push the little clutch band down, and then to see the emergency brake was over here on this side, and the gas up here, spark down here, and got them all coordinated. And then when it got ready to go into high gear, I let off my low clutch and pushed that down. It was in high gear. And so then next day, I got the whole family in the car. This is my second time to drive when I was just a kid. And they all got in the car and was going over to a neighborhood where my dad pastored church. And as we was going around through the bottoms, we come to Cache River Bridge, and they were repairing that bridge, and they had running boards about that wide to drive across that river on, that bridge. And they all the family got out of the car, and I drove that car across there by myself, on them running boards. got across. Well, then they got back in the car and we went up in the hills, and I've been driving ever since.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
But anyway, you know, and that was back, you know, when I was a small child.
All right. So how is it then that you came to St. Louis? You told us a little bit off the camera about
Yeah,
that.
and when I guess I was 16 years old or whatever, my dad was here. My family was on welfare. We called it relief back in them days. And I got to the point where, you know, I tried to get work, and so I left home, and then I come to I come to Walcott, Arkansas, and I was working for a guy there, and there was 3 men from St. Louis came down there quail hunting, and so they got their quails and they brought their kill in, you know, and Miss May, she cooked them for them. We had dinner, and Herb May, he said to these 3 guys, he said, "Why don't you take this boy back to St. Louis with you, and so he can get him a job?" They said, "Okay." They were in a 1941 Club Coupe Ford, and so we all crawled in that car and we took off that night. And one of them was Walker Cooper, who was the catcher for the Cardinal baseball team. And then the constable of Jefferson Township, he had an office out in Maplewood, and a farmer close by St. Louis. That was the 3 guys. And they were strangers to me, and when we got to Sykeston, they stopped to eat, but I just stayed in the car. I didn't even get out of the car, you know.
Didn't want to be left behind.
I didn't want to be left behind, yeah.
So did you even get much of a chance then to say goodbye to Mom and Dad? And
No, I didn't, because we didn't have phones back in them days, and you know, and I wasn't very up on writing, but you know, it was.
you just decided and you were going to go.
Decided I was going to go. I went just on the spur of the moment. I come to St. Louis.
Yeah. Now up to that time, what's the longest you'd kind of been away from home?
That's the longest time I'd have been away from home, because I'd been at home. I'd stayed at home ever since I was born, you know, there with my family.
Right.
And it was really a new thing for me. And of course, I come up here, and I had a cousin up here that I happened to know where he lived, and then the constable got me in his car, and he brought me up and lived in Wellston. And he had he got that spotlight on that police car, and you know, and he looked for the number, and I went and applied at White Castle and South Kings Highway for a job one day. The next day I went to work on the curb. I was a curb boy.
Yeah.
And so I hopped curb for a while. Then it took me inside and they put me on the grill. I was the grill guy. And then I was assistant manager of a castle out in Maplewood. Then I was assistant manager of the White Castle on Natural Bridge and the Kings Highway. And I was working there when I went into the service.
And what branch of the service did you go into?
I went in the Army Air Corps. That was when it was together. The Army and the Air Force was together back then. It hadn't separated yet. I called it Army Air Corps.
What year was that?
That was in 1943.
Were you drafted or did you volunteer?
I was drafted, and so I was supposed to report to Jefferson Barracks, and I wanted to go back home, to go in, and they said it's too late now. They wouldn't transfer me, so I went down and got me a ticket and went to Paragould, and I reported down there, and so then I went a month later. I went to Camp Robinson, Arkansas, Little Rock, Arkansas. That's where I was inducted at Camp Robinson.
Okay. Where all did you go while you were in the Army?
I went then I went to after Camp Robinson. I went to Shepherd Field, Texas, and that's where I took my basic training. 3 months there, about 3 months. And then after that, I wanted to be an airplane mechanic, and I wanted to go to AM school. They wouldn't let me go. They wanted me to go to cook and baker school, and I didn't want to be a cook. And so then they shipped me to Laurel, Mississippi, That's pretty close to Hattiesburg, Mississippi. And Laurel, Mississippi Air Base. And I was on the 71st Reconnaissance Group, and I was in the 25th Liaison Squadron, which had small planes, and we were reconnaissance group, that took pictures and spied on the enemy and all stuff like that.
Where were you stationed then after you completed all your training?
I was stationed at Laurel, Mississippi. Then from there, I went to San Francisco, and on 1943 on Halloween night, I boarded a troop ship to go overseas, and it was New Amsterdam, and it had been converted. It was a luxury liner. It had been converted to a transport ship, and so it took me 18 days on the sea to get to Sydney, Australia. Sydney, Australia, where we landed, and we went up to Brisbane, Australia on a troop train. And then we got ready there for the jungles. We went up to New Guinea Island. And so we was in New Guinea and went from island to island, and then the Netherlands, East Indies. And then I was on my way to invasion of the southern Philippines when President Roosevelt died. And we went in and reclaimed the territory over Mindanao, called Mindanao, in the southern Philippines. And then I was wanting to get a furlough to go home, but I signed that I'd be willing to come back and spend more time in the South Pacific. And then on my way home, the war ended. And then when I got back, and when the war ended, they took our ship. We was at the dock, and we went out through the submarine nets, and they told us back and said, all Army personnel disembarkate. They took our ship and went to Japan with it to haul prisoners from Japan. And so we waited about 19 days for another ship to come on into San Francisco. And I docked in San Francisco on September the 23rd, 1945. And so I remember that because that was my first daughter's birthday. She was 2 years old the day I docked in San Francisco, and I never saw her.
You hadn't seen her before?
I hadn't seen her before, and so then we come into... we'd been in jungles all that time I was over. We hadn't been in really a civilized country much anywhere. So we was because that was our job. And when we coming into San Francisco, neon lights, we could see them, flickering on and all that. They tried to run us down below, and we wouldn't go. And they got the water hoses out, and they were cleaning the decks down, and all that. But we won't. That was really a great thing to see our homeland, because when I left on Halloween night, I didn't figure I'd ever be back to see that country again.
Now, in reconnaissance, did you actually see combat, or would you be in before combat or after?
Yeah. We was I forget how many. I got 4 stars for 4 campaigns that we was in, for different ones. And we were going in. We were going into the Philippines. Of course, Leyte was the first island that was captured back from the Japanese. Then I was there. I didn't go in on invasion day. I was a rear echelon on that island. But on Leyte, I was in the advanced echelon. I was there on D-Day, and I was going in. We were going in under fire. The battleships were turned broadsided, and we could see them by just about daylight. We could see the flashes from the guns, and we could see those ships as there was the recoil of them guns. That ship would rock, when there was a gun, rock like this. And we went right up under that, and then our LST that I was on, I seen it turn and go this way. We went down shore a little ways where there wasn't no roads or docks or anything, and run up, let the front end down, and out we come with our equipment,
So,
waded to the shore and cleared out a road going up to the place where we made camp. And that was Del Monte Pineapple Plantation where we was, and they had bombed the canning factory. It was tore all to pieces and everything, you know. But we used that for our commissary, for our supplies.
Did you have a best buddy when you were in the?
Yeah, I had a good buddy. His name was I can't think of his name right now, but maybe I will. But we kind of was hung together pretty much so, and we was out looking for pineapple, and we got 2 Filipino guerrillas to go with us, and they had M1 rifles. I had a 45 pistol on my hill. He had a Jap 25 pistol on his hill. Neither one of us could get inside a barn, and so we was in a Jeep, and he was driving. And Bowman was his name, and he was driving, and these 2 guys, Filipino soldiers, they jumped up and hollered, jab, 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 you know, like jabbing around, going on down. And Bowman stopped the Jeep, and I said, "What are you stopping for? We're up here, we're there out here. We're just setting ducks." And so he killed the motor, and it wouldn't start. I jumped out and pushed that Jeep by myself, and got it started to get out of that, because I didn't know what all they saw. I didn't know what was out there. You know what was out there. But we got out safe anyway. So.
Were you ever wounded?
I was never wounded. I never, but I caught malaria fever there in the Philippines. I had a temperature. I run a temperature of 106, and I fixed breakfast that morning for the troops, and then they put me in a plane, flew me to a field hospital, and I was in the field hospital for about. I was in there about 15 days, and I was still running temp, and they wouldn't discharge me, and it was so hard on your nerve, because kids and women all was in there around there that got wounded in the invasion, and people hollering, "Get me out of here! Get me out of here!" You know, and you'd hear a slap. Well, the orderly would slap somebody, bring them back to to bring them back out of their grief that they were in, kind of bring them back to reality. So I went down to the airstrip and saw one of our pilots, and I asked him, was he going back to the squadron? He said, yeah. I said, I'm going with you. So I went back, and when I got back, I reported to the medics. They said, where's your discharge? I said, I didn't get one. I just walked off from the hospital. And so they fixed everything all up and everything, but anyway.
All right, and so you got back finally to the U.S. in 1945?
1945, September the 23rd, 1945.
What did you do after that? You told us about your first daughter had been born by then.
Yeah, and so then we went to Angel Island. We were processed at Angel Island. It took a ferry boat, took us to Angel Island. And first thing, they gave us a big meal. They gave us a steak dinner and milk and I don't know what all. They fed us up, And then when they got all the process done, they put us on a troop train in San Francisco, and we was on a troop train about a week, traveling to Champ Chaffee, Arkansas, Fort Smith, and there's where then they processed us and everything, and I got out on points. I had enough points to get a discharge, and so I got a discharge, and so it was October the 4th. 1945 when I got my discharge. October the 5th I went home and got home about around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I had a cab to take me out from Paragould out there, and that's the first time I saw Peggy, and by bedtime Peggy brought her nightgown and to me dressed her for bed that night. She was 2 years old.
She'd take to you just like you hadn't been gone.
Yeah, just like that I'd never been away. Yeah. And and I always took a lot of pride in that. Of course, she hung on to me the rest of the time. Then we were really close, and she was really a good kid.
Tell us a little bit about the rest of your family.
Well, as I was telling about, that my oldest brother had bad eyes, and he'd spent 9 months a year away from home going to school for the blind at Little Rock, Arkansas. And then Paul, one of the brothers older than me got burned to death, he had on his flannel nightgown, and Chester put some paper in this stove, and it had a hearth there, and the fire rolled out in the hearth, and Jesse got his nightgown caught fire, and of course the flame, just like gasoline, you know, that flannel, and just went up, and he breathed that in and burned his insides, and that was one of my brothers. Then Paul, he had bad eyes, and he went to school for the blind some, and then they discharged him because they thought they'd helped his eyes enough that he could go to seeing school. But he went to the school that I went to just for a little while, and he couldn't make it, so he dropped out of school. He didn't get no education either. And then there was my sister, Hattie Mae. She was 2 years older than me, and she and I really was the ones that really. And I remember her standing in a chair cooking meals for the kids and for the family, you know, and everything. And she and I was pretty close, and we were good buddies. And then there's J.W. He was 2 years younger than me, and he was a rebel. And finally, after I went into service, well, he volunteered, and he was really underage, but he spent all his time in the guardhouse because he beat up the commanding officer's car with a 2x4, and he got a dishonorable discharge.
That's the kind of thing that'll get you put in the brig, won't it?
Yeah, we sure will, boy, I tell you. And then he got killed in Arizona, and I don't know, it was probably around early 60s, 61 or 62. And a fan, he was plugging in a fan. He was working on a tractor, and he plugged in a fan. They said it was a 110, he plugged it into 220, but I don't know how he did on the receptacle unless somebody changed the receptacle. But a blade flew off the fan and embedded in his chest and cut the artery to his heart, and they could not keep him surviving. And so that was one the brother. See, that was J.W. Then. There was Russell, which is my brother still living. There's three of us living now, 10 kids. Russell, and he was born in 1932. And I remember when he was born, April 14th, and it came a snow that night that he was born, his birth. And so he's still living. He and I see him once in a while, but Major, he also had bad eyes, and he spent. He is 80 years old now. He spent about 9 months a year in school for the blind because he read with his fingers. And Hattie and I, we took him to school with us, and for our show and tell. Because no kids ever saw anybody read with their fingers, you know. We took him, he thought that was something great, you know. And they would see him reading Braille, you know,
right.
With his fingers. But anyway, and so, you know, we wasn't real close to them because we wasn't with them very much. When they come home, they were petted all that time till they got back, you know.
Right.
And that was. Well, and then Norman, which was one of my brothers, and he fell out of a buggy on his head when he was a baby, and he was sick after that. He had a stroke. He had infantile paralysis, but I believe the fall what done it, because he was just starting to walk, and he couldn't walk no more. He had to be carried on a pillow, and so he was paralyzed in his right side, leg and arm after that. And so he lived to be 60 years of age, and he passed away. And then Sudell, my youngest sister, she also had bad eyes, and she lived to be about 60 years old, I think it was, before she passed away.
Yeah. Well, you told us a little bit about after you came back from the Army. and working your way back here. What did you do as a career? We know you.
Well, I said, nobody is going to tell me what to do anymore, and I'm not going to stand in the line no more, because I got my discharge and I was a free man now. I bought me a 50-acre farm, and I was going to be a farmer. And so I went to ag school, and I farmed for 5 years, and then I had a lot of problems. I did pretty good. I had livestock and also row crop, and so I was milking several cows and separating the milk cream, and I would ship cream to St. Louis, to the Sugar Creek Creamery here in St. Louis, and they'd send me a 5-gallon can. I'd send them back, and it kept things going like that all the time.
Where was your farm at?
It was at Leif, Arkansas, which is a little ways out of Perigou, about 12 miles out of Perigou, Leif, Arkansas. And then I sold the farm in 51, December 1951, right after Christmas. I sold everything I had. I'd bought a Arrow Fleetline Chevrolet, and I thought I really was going good. Put everything we had in that car, and I come to St. Louis with 2 kids. Come to St. Louis and got to St. Louis. I remember saying, when I saw the lights and everything coming in down around Crystal City, I said, I'm never leaving here again, because I'd left St. Louis, went to service, and then I'd left the farm, and I was coming back. I said, I'm never leaving here again, and here I haven't so far. still here, but then I come in. I went to small arms plant, and I was going to put me on an application there, and there's such a big line. I left there and went to Chrome Graft, and I went in, put in my application. They said, okay, go down and take a physical. I went down and took a physical, and January the 2nd of 1952, I started to work in Chrome Graft. I worked there for 29 and a half years. And of course they wanted me to take a foreman's job, but I wouldn't take a foreman's job because of my church work. And I'd tell the superintendent would tell me, he'd say, Harvey, you can do more for your kids, you can you buy this, that, and that. And I said, Mr. Lampy, money is not everything in life. Some other things are more important than money. But you got to have some money. But anyway, I was a supervisor. I was assistant, and I would do that, and I would fill in for foreman. But I never really take the job officially because of that. Because of the church.
Well, and that's something that I wanted to ask you about. You obviously have had a calling to be a preacher.
Yeah.
When did you first feel that calling?
Well, in December of 1951 is when I rededicated my life. I went and rededicated my life to the Lord, and I promised the Lord I'd do whatever that He would have me to do. And of course, got involved in the church and church work. And when I come to St. Louis, I went to a mission, interdenominational organization, and it was a rescue mission, working with down and outers, alcoholics, drug addicts, young people, and things of that nature. And so I felt in my heart that the Lord wanted me to preach, and so I wouldn't for a while. I got me a guitar, and I took lessons. I was going to sing and play and all that stuff, but it didn't work out. So I said, okay. And then it was in 1954, I think it was, or 53 or 54 is when I was licensed as a preacher, and I worked in the mission, worked in different churches, and then I was ordained then. I took the church of the mission as a pastor, and 1959, about August 1959, and then I was ordained in August 1959 as an ordained minister. And I went to American Bible School. I went to several different Bible colleges and stuff like that, to try to help myself and prepare myself and teach and study and stuff like that.
When did you get your first congregation?
My first congregation was in 59, August of 1959. Our pastor went to Michigan, back home, and he was on vacation. He fell off a hay wagon and fell on a 5-gallon bucket and broke so many ribs. I don't know how many ribs it broke, and it punctured his lung and he died. And so I took his place in August, right after, around August of 1959.
And what was the name of the church?
Union Mission Church.
How long did you stay there?
I stayed there for 10 years. And we was, well, when Highway 70 was built, they bought our property because we had 3 lots along from East Grand on Broadway. We had 3 lots, and we had a ball diamond, we had a church building, and so when they was buying up that property for Interstate 70, well, they took that property. Then we bought a building up on College and Emily, right off of West Florissant, right in that same area, close to the O'Fallon Park, in that area right there. And I was there till 1969. 1969, I resigned, and that's when I learned that song that I sung a while ago. That it was 1969, and this lady from Third Baptist used to be a soloist at Third Baptist, and she taught me that song, "Born to Serve the Lord," and she kind of helped me to learn it and everything in 1969.
Would that be your favorite song, or do you have a favorite?
Well, that's my favorite. That's one of my favorites, you know. And I sang it a lot, and a lot of people want me to sing it, you know. And so that's kind of like Almeida's favorite song, you know. We sing it sometimes.
And I know preachers probably never get to fully retire, but you sort of retired several years ago.
Yeah, I retired in what was it? Around close to 1990, right, 89 or 90, something like that. And we went then over to New Hope Church and everything. And then I see I was pastor of Mount Zion General Baptist Church from 69 until about that time. What was it? 25 years, around 25 years or 20 years or something like that. I was pastor of Mount Zion 25 years totally. I come back for a little while to help them out, and we come back. So I was pastor there 25 years.
Now, we were hearing a little bit from you before we started about how you first met my Aunt Meade. And it's an interesting story to us. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that.
Okay. Well, like I was telling a while ago about, we worked at the same place, and I used to see her and her late husband. Buell. I'd see him go to the cafeteria for lunch, and I'd see him come and go, and I seen some things, that I told about, and everything. But I just looked out the window and saw a lot of that before where my department was. I was a sample maker at that time, and made the first product it was. But I used to go down in the basement when I was working on that, and I'd see her in her department. All that we just spoke a time or two, or time of the day or something like that. It was until I guess it was 1985 when my first wife passed away, 1985, and then we was bowling together, and I knew her pastor. I knew the church over there. I'd been over there because I'd been involved with New Hope quite a bit, and I didn't know all about her, but I knew some of her friends and all that. So then we started just going, getting a hamburger or whatever, and bowling and stuff like that.
What was your first date? That you would call a date.
First date was that was I can't remember. I know we were going bowling with with Jenny and
Yeah.
George and some of
Our
them.
first date was when we went to the Union Hall, wasn't it?
Went to the Union Hall.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
dinner.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Long
don't
in a time.
remember what it was around. It was around 86.
Well, it was getting in close,
It was after
close.
Christmas.
Yeah. Well, see, at Christmas time in 85,
Yeah.
Alveda had a bunch of her church here at the house, and I was invited here, and she had. There was a bunch of them here. I stayed for a while, then I excused myself and went. That was still in 85.
Yeah.
And then wrong towards 1st of 86, we started really officially being together and dating, and then we set a date and for
And the rest is history, as they say.
after history. So then we set a date for October the 4th, October the 4th.
Well, I know you guys have been very happy together,
Yeah.
and you have a whole passel of
Yeah.
grandkids and great grandkids that you're very active with. What kind of things do you like to do with them?
Well, we like to go with them to their sports and watch them in their sports, and we like to just be with them and play games, and we like to babysit them. We babysit a lot, like that. And on my side, they're so far away, I don't see them as often or much. But I got two great grandsons that one of them calls me once in a while, so that he wants me to talk to him a little bit on the phone, and I do, Michael, and so then I'm getting a great another child pretty soon in February, I think.
Okay. Well, and a couple of questions to kind of end up here. Let me ask you, what's the most embarrassing thing you remember doing as a kid that you got caught at that now seems funny, or that somebody reminds you about when you see them? What's the most embarrassing thing you remember doing?
I think I didn't get caught at it, but I think the most thing that I keep in my mind. I never got into anybody's watermelon patch or anything like that when I was growing up. I was probably about 9 years old or 10, probably in that area. So the guy had a watermelon planted in his cotton patch, and so I wanted a watermelon. So I went and looked for this and got over in his cotton patch, and I got looking, and I saw a big old striped thing about so big around. And I thought, man, I'm going to snatch me one of these watermelons, and I'm going to take it out here and bust it and eat it. And I took it out there, and I pulled it, took it out there, and throwed it down, and it bounced. And it wasn't a watermelon; it was a citron, and they don't break very easy. So I didn't get no watermelon after all. That was one of the deals that I remember. But that's probably. And my school time that there was some of the kids that I didn't like too well, because the teacher got me first using bad English, and I'd say the word ain't, and so I'd get my name on the blackboard for using this bad word. Well, the girls, they would come around and they would say, "Harvey, I want to borrow your knife?" I'd say, "I ain't got hern." I knew what they was doing. I ain't got hern. And they go tell Miss Opal. Miss Opal say, "Harvey, come up here." And I come up there, right before them all, before the class. She'd say, "What is this I hear about you carrying an ant in your pocket?" And I knew what was going on, And she became one of my worst enemies that I had, And I said, after I rededicated my life, I had to forgive Miss Opal. I would say about Miss Opal, if she was in a quicksand, I would not pull her out. But I had to redo that, because it was before the clash, and everything, and I knew that. I knew what they were doing all the time, you know. But,
Well, you talked about the girls who teased you. Do you
Yeah.
remember your first crush? Do you remember your first crush on a girl?
yeah, I think that's when I first left home. I think, and I thought, well, I gotta go over. My dad wouldn't let me have the car. He wouldn't let me drive the car on my own, but he had to be along with me. So I went at Rector, Arkansas, and rode a truck to this little church where I'd been going, you know, where this girl was. And I really didn't know her real good, but I think I took her home one time in a wagon. rode a wagon with it, and I don't even remember her name now. But anyway, and so I went out to help her milk a cow, and I was helping milk this cow, and this cow picked her foot up and set it down in the milk bucket right in front of her, you know, all that. But that was about the end of that first deal. I can remember that really plain, you know, and then I went out to Walcott, where I met these people to come to St. Louis. But
All right. Well, last question then. And there's a country song about what you'd tell yourself if you could go back in time, knowing what you know now. If you could go back to when you were a boy, 15 or so, what would you tell yourself to do different?
well, I would probably tell myself to be more cautious and to take stock on different things in my life, you know. And what I would say, and what I've always had a guilty conscience about, I never told my mother where I was going. And my dad told me when I saw him, said, "Harvey, you ought to go see your mom. She's been worried about you." And I wasn't mad when I walked off like that, but this is one thing that if I could, you know, I would apologize to her on that.
All right. Well, I think that was the questions that I had to ask you. Can you think anything else you wanted to talk about?
No.
Anything else you want to just tell us about a funny story or anything you remember that? We asked you about something embarrassing about you. What about something embarrassing about Aunt Meade? No, you don't have to do that. You don't have to do that.
Yeah, well, but you know, it's just like when we were growing up, you know, as kids were growing up, and thing comes back to me lots of times, you know, about we made our own toys, and we you know, our things that we did and everything like that, you know, and we made cars, and we took stuff like that, you know, and put bucket lids on a stick, you know, and for steering wheels, and we took the tobacco cans and stomped them down and bent them up like that and nailed them on a piece of wood, and then took a little hook about so long off of a hub of a wagon, and we used that, you know, and roll it down, and we'd roll that thing around, and that was our pastime. That was what we do, the main thing, you know. And so it was. I think it taught us to appreciate what we've got, you know, all that stuff. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you.
Good job. Red button. Red button.
Dinner down there, you know.
That's $1 a day.
$1 a day.
For 9 hours of work.
Yeah, the cheapest I ever worked, and I didn't keep no hours in. That's when I was going to school. I come by the doctor's office, and I worked for Dr. Lloyd, and I would carry in coal and kindling and clean his office, and I would wash his A model Ford that he made his calls on. I'd wash that once in a while on Saturday, and he gave me 25 cents a week for that, and I was going to school. And he gave me that quarter, I'd go right across the street, and I would to the post office, and I'd change that into pennies. And you talk about having jingle pockets, man! I could really jingle my money.
With 25 pennies.
But see, I had a lot of friends then, because I'd buy these jawbreakers. It's all-day jawbreakers, and I'd buy these big bubble gum stuff. For a penny, you could buy a lot of that stuff for a penny.
So how did you manage to stay out of trouble, only being 16 years old and on your own?
Well, I just did. I just
Knew right from wrong?
knew right from wrong. And well, see, I was a preacher's boy, and I went with my dad preaching. I read the Bible from my dad back, when I was very young.
Yeah.
My mom always wanted me to go with my dad because I had good eyes. My dad didn't, and she
He
felt.
had to walk everywhere he went.
We walked. There was nothing to walk 9 to 10, 12 miles to go to fill his appointments at a country church. He'd have a circuit, where he went. And so mom, she said she'd feel better about it if I was with him, and I kind of watched out for him and everything. And he didn't use a walking cane, but he couldn't see very good. And so that.
Did he get paid as a preacher? Did they pay him?
No.
No?
Once in a while, I remember him coming home and bringing him home, and he had some potatoes. They'd give him some potatoes and apples, some fruit, like that, because people didn't have no money.
Yeah.
But they might give you something like that, And I that was back when there wasn't no money hardly to have, And nobody would let you ride because they said it cost too much, take too much gas to stop, pick you up, and so they just pass you right on by. Even if they knew you, they wouldn't stop. And and you lots of times a dime. Well, when I was working, it's not too far before I come to St. Louis. I was working on the Mayo Ditch, and I was getting $1 a day. And I gave a dime a day to ride to work, so I had 90 cents a day left.
10% of your pay to get to work.
To get to work.
Yeah.
And I rode to work.
Every day.
Every day. Not, it's before this.
You guys like to have something to drink? I got Pepsi. Sure.